Good evening and welcome to the Paranormal Lens podcast, hosted by Jotnick's Paranormal. My name is Chad Thomas. I'm here with Jamie and Kirsten. How are you guys this week?
Good. Yeah, it's been a week, but here we are, right?
Yep, Jamie, I believe you're older than you were last week.
Yeah.
It's a rumor. It's a rumor. Yeah,
Nasty rumor.
Yeah, you're right. Officially, I am by one day.
By one day.
Just another number tacked onto the end of that life year count. But,
Another surprise, right? What's gonna break this year?
yeah.
So far, it's been the round numbers, the zero numbers, where things change drastically. So I'm in the middle of a series. I think I'll be all right.
Okay. Good.
I hope. I hope. Knock on some fake wood here.
So, how was everybody's week? Good. Other than that, do anything fun?
I went to see my horse. Things like that.
Okay, that's always good.
Yeah, I think today's been the most exciting. Sick husband with a 8-month-old, so he can't watch her today. So take it off work, and that's been my whole day.
Tonight we're going to swing the paranormal lens towards the northwest of England and land in the city of Liverpool. Now, Liverpool is known for several important things. If you ask people what the city is famous for, many, especially those born before a certain time, will say the Beatles. That was an English rock band formed in 1960 for our younger listeners. Others might say You'll Never Walk Alone, the anthem of the Liverpool Football Club. That's a sports ball team, Jamie, and that we might call that soccer. And some might point to the fact that Liverpool
was football. Come on.
And some might point to the fact that Liverpool was the port where the RMS Titanic was registered, along with its famous docks and waterfront. All those things matter, but tonight we're focusing on something else. Something hidden, something buried. The Williamson Tunnels. Now let's start with the maps. When you first see them, they don't look random. They look intentional. A sprawling underground system stretching beneath Edge Hill. Large chambers, connecting passageways, multiple levels. You might think, was this for a subway system? Maybe a sewer network? Could it have been underground living spaces? But the truth is, we don't actually know why these tunnels exist. To understand the tunnels, we have to understand the man behind them. His name was Joseph Williamson, and he was born in Yorkshire in 1769. He moved to Liverpool at the age of just 11 years old. Joseph lodged with the Tate family and began working in their tobacco and snuff factory. The family must have seen something in him because they let him marry their daughter Elizabeth Tate, and he eventually took over the business. And he did very well. He became wealthy, he was successful, and he was established. But he was also a bit eccentric. On the back of a portrait, Williamson has written in his own handwriting that the portrait is a good likeness of me when I was half seas over. Now, that isn't a term that we typically hear today, but in Williamson's time, it describes someone who was inebriated just enough to be unsteady or jovial, but not completely helpless, often implying a state of halfway to complete drunkenness. You have to ask yourself, why would you write that on a painting of yourself? Maybe it was the social media of the times. I don't know. Let's zoom out, because Liverpool in the 1800s was exploding. In 1701, the population was around 6,000 people. By 1801, around 80,000 people. That's not growth, that's a surge. Liverpool had become one of the most important ports in the world. At one point, nearly 30% of global trade passed through its docks. Ships came in constantly, goods moved nonstop, and with that came people. But then everything shifted. The Slave Trade Act of 1807 disrupted major economic systems, and in 1815 the Napoleonic Wars ended. Soldiers came home and workers flooded the city. People needed jobs, families needed homes. Liverpool wasn't just growing, it was struggling to keep up. This is where Joseph Williamson steps in. He lived on Mason Street in an area called Edge Hill. The name says it all. It sat on the edge of a slope where the land dropped sharply, sometimes by as much as 20 feet. Now, Williamson began building houses along this uneven terrain, but he wanted something more. He wanted gardens, large, elegant, open gardens. The problem was the land wouldn't allow it, so instead of changing his plans, he changed the ground itself. He built underneath it. Williamson had massive brick arches constructed, effectively creating artificial platforms. Above them, gardens could flourish. Below them, empty spaces formed. And this may have been the beginning, because once that work started, it never really stopped. And that empty space may have been the beginning of everything. At first, it made sense. Structural support, engineering solutions, but then it kept going. Williamson had the money, and more importantly, he had workers. Some believed he employed large numbers of laborers, possibly as a form of philanthropy, giving jobs to unemployed in a time when work was scarce. Others think there was no grand plan at all, that this was just simply an obsession. What started as structural support for gardens evolved into something much larger. Workers dug deeper into the sandstone, chambers expanded, passages connected, and over the next 30 years, what formed beneath Edge Hill was not a single tunnel, but a labyrinth. When Williamson died in 1840, the work stopped, and whatever purpose the tunnels had died with him. I touched on it a little bit, but let's dig a bit deeper into why. Why would a wealthy man spend decades digging beneath a city, creating something this large, this complex, and then leave behind no explanation? There isn't just one theory, there are several. Not just about the tunnels, but about Joseph Williamson himself. The most widely accepted explanation is that Williamson was trying to help people. At the time, like I said earlier, Liverpool was flooded with unemployed workers. The end of the Napoleonic Wars left many soldiers without jobs. Economic shifts, especially after the Slave Trade Act, also disrupted trade and employment. People needed work, and Williamson had money. So instead of simply giving to charity, he created jobs. But here's where it gets unusual. Some accounts suggest that workers were instructed to perform tasks that didn't seem to have a clear purpose, moving rubble from one place to another, only to move it back again later. Digging, filling, digging again. Almost like the work itself was the goal, not the result. If that's true, then the tunnels may not have been built for a function at all. They may have been built just to keep people employed. Now, there is a more grounded explanation, and parts of it are definitely true. Liverpool sits on sandstone, and that sandstone was valuable. It could be quarried, cut out, and used for building materials. So some historians believe the tunnels began as quarry sites, large vertical cuts known as slot quarries where stone was removed. Then instead of leaving those spaces open, Williamson had them reinforced, arched, connected, and expanded. This would serve multiple purposes: stabilizing the land above, creating foundations for buildings, allowing construction on uneven terrain, and in Edge Hill, where the ground dropped sharply, that kind of engineering made sense. So in this theory, the tunnels weren't mysterious at all. They were simply a byproduct of construction. Then there's the more psychological angle. What if Williamson wasn't following a plan, but creating one as he went? He was known to be eccentric, private, and unpredictable. Some believe the tunnels were a form of experimentation, testing structures, testing space, seeing what could be built underground. Others go a step further. They suggest that this may have been an obsession, a need to build, to expand, to continue a project long after it made practical sense. Not everything humans create has a clear reason. Sometimes the act of creating is just enough. Now we're going to move into a more speculative territory, but it's a theory that keeps coming up. Some believe Williamson may have had religious motivations, that he feared something coming, an apocalypse, maybe a reckoning, and that these tunnels were meant as a shelter, a place of protection, or even preparation. There's no solid evidence to confirm this, but it persists as a theory because of the scale and the secrecy. And finally, there's the simplest explanation of all. We don't know. No plans left behind, no writings explaining the purpose, no final design. What we're left with is a structure without a clear intent, a massive undertaking with no confirmed reason. So when you walk through the Williamson Tunnels today, you're not just walking through history, you're walking through questions, through theories, through possibilities, and maybe that's what makes them so compelling. Because unlike the structures we study, these weren't built to be understood. After Williamson's death, the tunnels didn't just sit abandoned. They were buried. Water began to collect underground, creating unstable conditions. Sounds vaguely familiar, like what I talked about a couple weeks ago. Local residents started using the openings as dumping sites. Rubbish, debris, household wastes. When the buildings were demolished, the rubble was taken below and used as backfill. Over time, entire chambers were filled in. Entrances disappeared, and eventually, so did the tunnels themselves. Williamson never left behind a master map. The only early records came from people like James Stonehouse, who created a hand-drawn map in 1845 describing a chaotic underground maze. By the early 20th century, the tunnels were more rumor than reality. Fast forward more than a century. In the late 20th century, curiosity about Liverpool's underground history began to resurface. The real turning point came in the 1990s. A microgravity survey, a scientific method used to detect voids under the ground, revealed something incredible. Large underground spaces still existed. They hadn't collapsed. They hadn't disappeared. They had simply been buried. From there, groups like the Friends of Williamson's Tunnel began excavation work. But this wasn't a large-scale industrial dig. This was a painstaking physical labor. Bucket by bucket, shovel by shovel. Volunteers removed tons of debris. And what they uncovered was like opening a time capsule. 19th century glass bottles, clay pipes, ceramics, old tools, and industrial remnants. Every layer told a story, not just of Williamson's time, but of everything that came after. And here's the unsettling part. Even today, excavation is still incomplete, which means much of the tunnel system may still be hidden. If you're picturing narrow, claustrophobic tunnels, you're only partially right. Because the Williamson tunnels are wildly inconsistent in size. Some areas are tight, cramped, and low, but others are massive. There are chambers stretching up 60 feet long and nearly 30 feet high, often referred to as the banqueting hall. This section is so large that the Royal Engineers used it to practice underground bridge building. Some sections drop more than 40 feet below ground level, with multiple layers stacked on top of each other. You'll find wide cathedral-like chambers with arched brick ceilings, medium-sized passageways connecting different sections, tight crawl spaces barely a few feet high. Some tunnels are straight, others twist. Some spiral downward, others end abruptly, either unfinished or still buried. It's not a system designed for efficiency. It feels more like something that grew organically over time, shaped by excavation rather than architecture. Today, part of the Williamson tunnels are accessible to the public, but only a fraction of what exists. You can visit sections through the Williamson Tunnel Heritage Center, where guided tours take you through restored areas, including the famous double tunnel. There are also sites like Mason Street where volunteer groups continue excavation work, offering a more raw, in-progress look at the tunnels. And at the Paddington site, you can find some of the largest chambers ever uncovered, multi-level spaces that give you a real sense of scale. But here's the key point. What you can see today is only a small piece of the puzzle. Much of the tunnel system remains buried, unmapped, and unexplored. Now, when we look at something through the paranormal lens, we like to at least find something paranormal. Well, the Williamson Tunnels don't let us down. There may not be a woman in white, but these following things have been documented. One of the most common things reported isn't a full apparition, it's a feeling. Visitors, workers, and volunteers have described sudden drops in temperature, the sensation of being watched, uneasy, heavy atmosphere in certain chambers, feeling disoriented or off in specific areas. Now, to be fair, this is an underground environment where there's low light, the spaces are enclosed, and the acoustics are strange, and your brain is already on edge. But still, time and time again, people keep reporting the same things. Another commonly reported phenomenon, sounds, specifically footsteps echoing when no one else is present, distant knocking or tapping, and movement sounds in blocked or sealed areas. Some volunteers working during the excavations have said they've heard what sounded like someone walking in adjacent tunnels, only to find that no one is there. In a place where passages are still buried or inaccessible, that idea hits a little differently. There have also been occasional reports of shadowy movements. Nothing clear, nothing detailed, but quick glimpses, a shape crossing a passageway, movements just outside the edge of a flashlight beam, and figures that seem to disappear when looked at directly. The kind of thing where you stop, look again, and it's gone. Some of the more interesting accounts come from people who've spent the most time down there, the excavation volunteers. These are people working long hours underground in quiet, isolated conditions. A few of them have described moments where they felt like they weren't alone, even though they knew they were. Not something aggressive, not something threatening, just a presence. There are very real non-paranormal explanations for a lot of this. Sound travels unpredictably in tunnels. Echoes can distort directions and distance. Air pressure changes can create drafts and temperature shifts. Low light conditions can play tricks on your vision and mind. Isolation can heighten awareness and anxiety. In other words, your brain is working overtime down there. But here's the thing. Even with all of that, people still walk away with the same thing. There's something about that place. And maybe it's not about ghosts in the traditional sense. Maybe it's something else. A location with no clear purpose, built in secrecy, buried and forgotten, then slowly uncovered, layer by layer. That kind of history has a way of leaving an impression. The Williamson Tunnels are more than just an underground structure. They are a mystery, built without explanation and then buried without record, only to be rediscovered piece by piece. Maybe they were built with a purpose, maybe they weren't. Maybe they were meant to be understood, or maybe they never were. And now, even now, after nearly 200 years, we're still asking the same question. Why? I'll let you ponder that for a moment while I cite some sources. The first one is williamsontunnels.com. The next one is www.countrylife.co.uk. Out and About the Williamson Tunnels, Liverpool, the bizarre underground system that's still a mystery 180 years later, -221909. That's a mouthful. The www.williamsontunnels.co.uk. bkthisandthat.org.uk, A Potted History of Liverpool, and liverpoolsites.com/blog/unearthing the mystery of the Liverpool Williamson Tunnels. All right. I think I got through it all. So, what do you guys think?
Well, the first thing I want to say is I can't believe you had to tell people that the Beatles were a band back in the day. Man, I'm old.
Well, you never know,
there,
Jamie.
there could be someone
I
that
guess.
could be like, who are the Beatles?
All right, fine.
Surprisingly, it's not me.
Well, there we go. We're halfway home. All right. Something struck me, and when you were talking about the construction or the activity, the seemingly uh, unnecessary activity of digging and filling, and the,
Right.
the non-planned part of that, it made me wonder. It obviously a couple things here could be true, but one is if it is like a capacity thing, like just to be able to, because you have affluence, you're wealthy, like to be able to pay people to do something, knowing that people needed work, in the time and the era. That's a really cool thing. Like even, dig it and fill it, dig it and fill it, that kind of thing. And dig
Right.
it here, fill it there, or whatever. But if it's an eccentric thing and or a different thing of some other direction, it kind of makes me wonder if that's not the same thing that was occurring at the Winchester Mystery House.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Maybe.
Like,
Sarah Williams, I'm sorry, Sarah Winchester was, adding on and adjusting and modifying that home forever.
Mm-hmm.
And, some of it makes me wonder if she was just doing it to provide employment opportunities for people in the area. It was an era where, even though she was affluent and rich, if you will, others weren't. There were some lean years in there, and maybe it was just her way of providing some opportunities, to keep things on the tables for people, food, resources, whatnot.
Right.
But also, she's very eccentric too. So, I mean, there's just wonderment for me, at least, this tipping point of perhaps there's something there.
Maybe.
Neither had a plan.
Right.
Really. Nothing was written per se, as far as some master, idea of what was going to be a final product that we found in either case. So there's a lot of parallels there. It just, I think, is really interesting. Obviously, there's a gap in space and time, but location and all that stuff. But it's curious.
It is. I didn't put that together. I was too focused on this, but it's good to see that from a larger, a further step back. So that's cool. The structures are just amazing. Like looking at this and how big it is, and
that's impressive.
I liked the fact that the Royal Engineers practiced building underground bridges in the space. Like it was that big.
That's amazing.
At least there was space to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is an archaeologist's dream.
Oh yeah.
I could speak a little bit to that, but you're first of all, you're in an urban location, so you're not somewhere out in the wild somewhere, without resources. The interesting thing to me, at least, that is that you're doing this with the urbanness happening around you, not necessarily in your space, but you're in a highly densely populated city.
Right.
And that's that dynamic of this not being located, or it's a known thing. It's been known it's there, but not being a pit, a fill of sorts, for refuse and other things through the years. It's just amazing to me, how that just kind of like that transition, and that alone would be interesting to excavate just to see the layers of that, how society has changed, and things. And then, you don't have to go far when you're done, you don't have to go very far either. So your
Right.
resources are close. The one thing I think is really disappointing is that there's not a lot of funding for this. The society is the sole support, and they rely heavily on people, like you and I as visitors and guests and donors, and therefore to to keep things up. And that's not unique in the paranormal, right? I mean, that's
Not at all.
places.
No.
But it's amazing to me that this is such a treasure and a amazing space that it doesn't have some reliable stream other than the ticket price, if you will,
Right.
or the donor request, which is very fickle, depending on the era you're in and the capacity you have.
Mhm. Well, it's disposable income. That's one of the first things that
Mhm.
goes.
That's what you cut, right? Exactly.
But this is one of those things again that points to one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah,
Like
good
like
point.
you know, you don't think that somebody in the future is going to be digging through your garbage pit,
Well,
but
there's a line from Raiders of the Lost Ark. When Indiana Jones is meeting with the French archaeologist, the bad guy Belloc,
wow,
in a bazaar, and the bad guy holds up a watch and it says, "Look at this, $10 pocket watch from the market. I go bury it in the sand 100 years and it's priceless."
hmm
And I was a teenager when I saw that, and that was a moment for me to like think, yeah, exactly, and it's truly a trash treasure moment. But that is what we find now as we, and again, excavating here and really truly investigating this space from the archaeology world would have been amazing, because those things that were mundane are aha moments for those coming in and finishing the process of
right,
going through the spaces.
right,
It's really interesting.
yeah. They connect the dots of daily life.
Mhm.
And it
That
tells you a lot about the people who were there as
right,
well,
right,
more so than true documents might in some cases.
right. So
It's another thing too. People have been living underground for ever, millennia, and not necessarily in organized spaces like this, but caves and other places back in antiquity.
hmm
So, whatever this was, it could have been a space, and very much like we talked a few weeks ago um, about the Edinburgh vaults.
Yeah.
You know, people clearly lived there. It was intentional. So
right,
maybe some of that was, it just didn't get to a place where the eccentricness of the build let them get there. And it wasn't done enough to get to the space where people would be.
right.
I mean, it's a different direction maybe, but it's all of that's really so interesting to me.
Yeah. So, but like what we know is there is just it covers so many miles of the city. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and without a master map, we don't know the percentage of
Right.
um, what's been recovered so far.
Right. Exactly. So.
It makes me think of Booby's Brewery in Mountjoy, our former home location, with the catacombs
Yeah.
downstairs, and how far the catacombs stretch, because there is a lower level than we were access to that we know went
Right.
at least a ways in two different directions.
I'd like to know
You know,
exactly how long that goes.
yeah, the rumor is they go all over, and the caverns are caverns, they're
Mhm.
natural formations. So, they could go quite a while, they could not go much. But, that belief is there. And until someone can actually get in and
hmm
excavate and do the true process, we will never know. It's always speculation. But this could be much more than what we already know, which is
hmm
crazy and cool at the same time.
Yep. So the picture that I have up here now, or the pictures that I have up here, the one on the bottom is actually what is left of his original house,
Oh wow.
which isn't much, but
No.
but then the other ones are what he would have built in the back to extend the gardens and stuff onto. So like the land literally drops quite a ways. So
It's amazing.
yeah.
Well, it's urban development. That's what we would call it now.
hmm
Um, the space purposement. It's really good, as far as a forethought.
hmm
Let's take an unusable space and make it be one.
hmm So and
Well,
then
onto the paranormal stuff.
hmm
Something crossed my mind, and I'm not trying to take anything away here, because obviously I've not been there, and I trust people's, experiences. You have to.
right.
But it makes me wonder, as I saw the images, everywhere that's underground. There's a lot of lighting
Mhm.
installed, that's running offline, and then getting to a bulb, and then that's your spot for that light, then go on to another and another and another.
Right.
It makes me wonder, though, what the age of that wiring is. And is it copper? And then therefore might it be kicking off a lot of EMF, which would cause some of the claims of disorientation,
Oh.
high-end sensitivity, those kind of things that we experience with people in the field here in normal settings. Like we deal with old properties that have knob and tube wiring still.
Yeah.
We know the brewery where we've been for the longest time still has that wiring in it. There were areas that was highly hot, with EMF, and therefore, people with higher sensitivities, and everybody has a different level of it.
Right.
Maybe that's a case there. I'm not discrediting the claims by any means, but just
Right.
trying to offer a solution or suggestion of a solution.
I mean, it's a good point, but if they only made the discovery in the 1990s, then most of that wiring would have been better shielded, better grounded.
Okay.
So it's a valid point. Who knows? Low budget. Who knows what they ran down there?
Well, we want to believe, right? That's the
Oh,
important
yeah.
thing. We want to believe there's something happening there because we're having experiences, and we there's a propensity to go to the paranormal immediately because it's a spooky space to begin with.
Right.
And there's some unknown history here, therefore there could be all these things, and we have to take into account the physical things that it could be first and remove all of those things. And when you take away, and we say this all the time, but when you take away the normal stuff, what you have left is the paranormal.
Right.
I'm not convinced, at least from this outside and far away perspective, that that's been done. I trust again the accounts that are provided, so
Right.
I will leave it there. But I guess what I want to say is I want to go. So
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's not like the other place that we talked about, the vaults, a couple weeks ago, the Edinburgh vaults, where they actually did a paranormal study.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It'd be sort of cool to do that here. Bert
Well,
had
maybe Williamson Society, if you need a host team,
We got you.
volunteering here. Just saying.
I was going to say maybe we should give it to Bert and Heather as an assignment while they're on their travels.
I mean, Liverpool's just like a quick little trip from Scotland, so why not?
Hop, skip, and a jump.
So, but it's definitely an interesting space. It's another one of those places. There's more questions than answers.
Absolutely.
I'd be interested to go in there and do some investigating. I just feel like the certain hallways that get very nice and narrow, you guys can go ahead. I won't go.
Yeah, all right. So,
Well, they're all meant as passages. I think narrow is relative to consideration of wider spaces. Like there's still people still had to be able to pass through these things. So I don't think anything's that. I get the claustrophobia thing.
Oh, yeah.
Is real, and I feel that at times too. But I think maybe have to see it first to say that.
so
There it is. All right, we were actually talking about a side trip.
Side trip for the road trip.
sounds good.
All right.
And Bert did say it's amazing that they're finished to include the ceilings. Like, if you couldn't see the pictures that we were showing, they're vaulted ceilings that are bricked. Like, these spaces were bricked. They weren't just dug out. They were bricked, and it's sort of like the catacombs at Boobies, where they went in and they put masonry in after they did the excavation. So,
Yeah, and that's intentional to provide stability, and also reinforcement against elements. Like you're in the water table at this point when you're underground, so you don't know where you're. If you get a high weather incident, a high rain incident, you might have some problems. So reinforcement like that really helps solidify the stationariness of the place. But it's intricate work. It's hands work. Like that's the thing. And maybe that's something else here. Going back to the whole why it was done. Somebody is working in life skills here. Learning masonry work, learning excavation. There's detail to this stuff that would trade out into the above ground world.
well,
And career path.
and not only the above ground world, but Liverpool now has train tunnels. So, and I think they did actually cross over. Like, I think the train crossed through some of these at some point, but some of the workers who developed skills working for Williamson ended up working for the railroads when he passed away, because they had trained, they had learned
The skills. Right.
Yeah, they'd picked up the skills. They were making the bricks. Like the bricks were all handmade. So, they learned those skills. There was one article that talked about, people would get injured doing this work because it's dirty,
Mhm.
dangerous work.
Of course.
Well, those people would then become the bookkeepers. They did payroll. Like he kept everybody working once he hired them. So, and that's sort of a cool thing. Just like he didn't just dismiss them because, oh, you're hurt, you can't do things, you're useless. He found work for them. So, which sort of leads to the philanthropy side.
It does. It really does.
So, definitely an interesting space.
It is. And I knew nothing of this prior.
No, I didn't either.
That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wonder how many other places like this there are. That we're all for, building and building and going, but we don't find things like this until we have to dig a foundation. Because our buildings are bigger and taller and wider and so forth and needing more structural support. So we're getting deeper into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
We're finding things like this because of it. And it's amazing because, we really don't know in some cases what's really there.
Right.
It's a happy accident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not running ground penetrating radar over everything just to see if there's something there.
Right.
So,
But we could.
we could. So, yeah, it's interesting. I've seeing a lot of people who are studying LiDAR maps that have been done along the Susquehanna River, and there's definitely some interesting formations that have been either naturally created or man-made created along the river that are worth investigating. So,
Yep, this was at one point a highly populated area before there was population.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Us population as far as white settlers.
Yeah. So, well, that's all I have on the topic. But
Okay, very cool. Thank you.
mm-hmm.
I know, it's fascinating.
Yeah. So we're ready to move on. Talk about what's coming next.
See what's coming up next.
All right.
I got this.
Yeah, good job.
I made this time. I know it.
Apparently, I didn't have this because I was on the wrong slide.
Oh, look at that. That's so kind of not there, but okay. So next week, I'm going to talk about the Monte Cristo homestead in southeast Australia.
Apparently, I forgot to change the picture. That's the Williamson.
You did. That's okay. It doesn't look anything like the picture, but
photo.
Yeah,
it's okay. It's okay. It's a mystery. So as this goes, it is noted as one of Australia's most haunted locations, and I think I can show you why next week. So tune in for that one.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yep, me too. And then after that, Kirsten's going to cover on the 28th, the exorcism of Annalise Michel, coming around on May 5th. How was it May already? Holy cow!
Right.
Chad's going to take on Shadows on College Hill. The Old Hospital Awakens. Very excited for that one. And then May 12th, I have the Magnolia Plantation in Derry, Louisiana. And Kirsten's back on May 19th from Folklore to Fear, the Cryptids of Celtic Lands. And then Chad's going to take on May 26th, the Mount Vernon, Haunting the Home of Washington. That's going to be interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are watching us here, thank you so much for joining us tonight on our live presentation. But if you're catching up with the social media services of Spotify, Apple, all the other good ones out there, there are ways to touch base with us should you want to see a different episode or something we haven't covered yet. And check out our website first with Nick's Paranormal. Oh my gosh, guys. I was doing so well until I had to use more words. Nicksparanormal.com. And I always stumble on the things I know, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's our website. You can email us at info@paranormal-lens.com. And that's all of the things you want to talk to us about. There's all kinds of good stuff going on. If you like the episode, want to talk about it, drop us a note, something you know about being in the Williamson Tunnels or in the vicinity in Liverpool, let us know. If there's an episode you want to see us cover down the line, certainly we're happy to do it. We do listener submissions all the time, but we need a little time to research it. But just drop us a line, give us the cue on what it is, and we'll take it. all of our socials, all the good stuff that we all have other than being here, are on Linktree, and that's linktr.ee/paranormal lens. And of course, like always, there's a bit of overhead to run the program. So if you're interested in helping support us, we have a Buy Me a Coffee, which is buymeacoffee.com/paranormal9. Or if you're watching us, there's a QR code on the screen to scan that. We appreciate any support. Help us keep this thing running. Just one of those things where every penny counts. So we appreciate support that you may give us. And if not, we're going to be here anyway. So keep the train moving.
You can't get rid of us.
Yep. Well, you can.
Well,
there's probably a way, but we have no intention of going anywhere anytime soon. So hopefully you're hanging on for the ride.
Yep.
So guys, as this all goes, so many fun topics coming up. So many we have coming. We've come behind us. I want to share that next week's going to be a special episode.
Ooh.
It's going to be our 150th.
Ooh!
Holy cow! How did we get here? So amazing.
Uh-huh.
And I remember maybe 12 of them. So.
You remember a lot more of them than that, Jamie. I'm the one. I don't remember what we've done, but you have a great memory on these things. So.
Normally, if I have to, if I think of a topic, I just send you a message, and half the time I'd be like, "Yeah, we've already done that."
Yeah, we did that one.
You'll tell me the exact season and episode.
I won't. I don't. If I give you that, that's because I looked. That's not me. But I do know the topics, generally speaking. Anyway, if I'm not sure, I'll look. But that was a point we made a long, long time ago. Is that the paranormal world has no walls, and the topics are endless. Like they really can be anyway.
Mm-hmm.
We try to vary the location, between physical stuff and cryptids and metaphysical things or whatever it may be. We try to vary that up a little bit, so we're not always talking about the same thing each week. But
right.
The reality is we've only scratched the surface after almost, how many 3 seasons, 4 seasons, whatever we're on now, 149 episodes. There's no end to this. It's crazy, and it's so cool at the same time. So,
definitely.
Thanks, listeners, for joining us and come along for the ride through all of this too. We certainly appreciate every one of you.
Mm-hmm. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and then one more thing too, and this is not a horn tooting moment, but I noticed in our metrics that we have now been listened to in 97 countries. Officially, there are 195 in the world. We need one more, and we're slightly over half.
Yes.
So, I'm so excited by that.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing as well. So thank you to everybody out there, wherever you are, whenever you're catching up to this. Thank you so very much. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Yep. Yeah. If you like what we do, share with your friends. Just share the Spotify link. We'd like to see that grow, and it's that'll be there. Facebook deletes things after a certain amount of time, I've noticed. But Spotify will be there indefinitely, so send people that direction.
Absolutely.
So, well, you guys have anything else before we wrap it up tonight?
No, I'm good. Thank you again for the topic, and this is really good discussion as well. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to the one next week, Jamie. So
yeah, next one's going to be good.
Yeah. So the Williamson Tunnels challenge everything we think we know about history, purpose, and the human mind. Were they an act of charity, a grand vision, or something far more mysterious? And with reports of strange sounds, shadows, and unexplained activity, maybe these tunnels aren't as empty as they seem. Some secrets were buried intentionally, and perhaps they're meant to stay that way. Stay alert. Sorry, I just got sidetracked. Stay alert. Stay respectful and stay curious. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.